Hey, it's Juck.
And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback.
The truth is, Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those.
You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country.
Good morning, everybody. Appreciate y'all for joining me here at JUCK on Bucks on a Monday morning. It's a new week, but we're on the same old thing. Obviously, Bucks got a bye week. We got a long time to just kind of sit and see where we're at, collect our thoughts here, talk about what we're going to do moving forward. What are the problems? How are we going to fix them? Watch the All 22 last night. And I got to say, one of the things that stuck out to me a little more than it did watching live was just how bad Oregon's tempo affected the Buckeyes. I don't think they were ready for it. There was so many plays where the defense had 3 or even 4 guys who were not set and ready for the play. And that is just a huge fail, obviously. But we got a good show for you today. I think here's the situation. KRIS texted me, and as you know, KRIS has a car that chauffeurs him down from Akron to Columbus every morning. He forgot to charge that car this morning, so he's running a little late. So until he gets here, we're going to wing it because I got notes for a 2-man show, which if you've never done this before, it's very different than a 1-man show. You're doing back and forth. But at any rate, a lot to talk about regardless. The top 5 came out, and I just want to say, like, I came in last week on Friday, and I said this, and I'm just debating whether or not I should come off of this. But here's what national pundit and whatnot, even a lot of Ohio State pundits and fans say, I think they'll probably lose out at Autzen and then win the Big Ten in a rematch. And like everybody thought, that was fine. You're going out on a really tough road trip at a really tough place to play, 2 relatively even matched teams, a really good team. And should you lose that game, not the end of the world if it's a competitive game. That's what this new system's all about. Teams are going to lose games. And now, all of a sudden, the goalposts have moved, as so often they do with Ohio State. And if they lose this game, it's some huge deal, a referendum on Ryan Day not being able to win the big game. And in Ohio State, not with their crack, there'll be a big fail. They'll bring up the $20 million. And again, everybody always tells me I care too much about this stuff, but that just irks me, man.
I mean, you're right. I mean, it feels like sometimes Ohio State fans do it too, and writers, we're all good before the season starts, and then the season starts, and we revert back to BCS mind. We can't lose a single game. No. Like, guys, Vegas before the year thought that Oregon was going to beat us. Like, this is Autzen Stadium. This is a good Oregon team. This is a top 5 matchup. It doesn't burst any bubbles if you lose the game. Like when Georgia lost to Alabama, was everyone saying it was the end of the world?
Right.
No, saying these are 2 Titans, had a heavyweight fight. Bama came out on top. Georgia's got to go fix some things, but Georgia could very well see you back to spin the block to get one back.
Spin the block. I love all the new words I learned from the youngsters, man. Spin the block. That's a pretty cool one. My point is, I bring that up because that was how everybody felt in the offseason and what changed and how everybody felt going into the game and why we saw damn near every pundit choose Ohio State before the game is we saw Oregon look like crap the first couple weeks, and everybody thought, oh, they're just not who we thought they were. But the Oregon team we saw Saturday absolutely was. And if you thought over the summer and in the offseason that this Oregon team was the real deal this year, you were right. I was one of them. I had thought in the first couple of weeks, well, I got that wrong. I didn't. I was just right. They're just good. And what I don't like about, I love Will Howard, man. I don't like that he came in the post-game presser and he said the old, they didn't beat us, we beat ourselves. Because I feel like you're totally discrediting your opponent, which makes you look even worse. The opponent was excellent. They were damn near flawless from their coaching, from their game plan to their execution. They were excellent. The quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, who's a guy I really didn't believe in. Holy crap, man. This guy put ball after ball on the absolute money. I think 4 balls over 20 yards for 179 yards. Like, the deep ball obviously destroyed Ohio State. There were so many Ohio State issues. And in the end, I chose the game. The score prediction 35-24. I expected them to score 24 points on the defense. They scored 31, one extra touchdown. So was I freaking out all weekend? Was I being a little hyperbolic? I think I'm confounding two issues here, right? You've got the game. That's one issue. And then you've got a totally different issue. And the other issue is what Nate just said right here. Thank you, Nate, for the super chat. The problem is, for us fans, it's the same story every time. So we've got two things at play. You've got the actual game, and then you've got the here we go again, dude. I am so sick of this. And I get it. I absolutely get it. But when you look at the team, we learned some things. I think we all can admit that we have learned that this is not a generational defense. I believe it might have been able to be a generational defense, but I think that there is a massive failure in the defensive coaching, and the massive failure in the defensive coaching starts with Ryan Day and the situation that he has put his defensive coordinator in, who I've lost quite a bit of faith in, by the way. Jim Knowles is no longer the wizard behind the curtain that I once thought he was. My point is, everything in a game like that starts and ends with pressure. And you can't get the pressure the traditional way, rushing your 4. You've got to be able to pivot and have packages. There's a lot of things that Jim Knowles would like to do that he is not able to do because of Larry Johnson. And that's just what it is, man. That's just what it is. And if you are the head coach of a team and you allow a position coach to dictate what the defensive coordinator can and cannot do, I think that speaks to a lot of things about you as a leader. I think it speaks to a lot of things about your team, about the chemistry in your coach's room. Like, I think it speaks to a ton more. And we brought this up, several times. It's inexcusable, to be quite honest. It absolutely is. It's inexcusable. So we can look at a lot of different things here. At the Oregon game, at the coaching staff, at the defensive issues, how you fix them. Because let's be honest, guys, we thought that this was going to be a defensive-led team. We thought that. A couple of weeks ago, I said, what if it's not? We were looking at some issues and some struggles that the defense was having. They were not performing as well as I thought they would have. And by the way, when you point, can everybody please remember this next year or the following year? National rankings in your defense and where this statistic ranks nationally mean absolutely nothing in your cream puff portion of the schedule, because some folks pointed out we might have some issues here with the linebackers after a couple of horrible quarters where they just look downright bad. And everybody jumped on them and said, number one defense, ha ha ha, LOL, you're an idiot. We saw some foreshadowing of what we were going to see on Saturday night. We saw some foreshadowing. There were some signs there, and those people got shouted down because of the number one rankings, and those things mean absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. Now, you've got the ability to fix this defense enough that you can still win, and all your goals are out there. I think that you played the best offense in the country on Saturday night. I think that against any other team, you probably win that game on Saturday night. I don't think it's really debatable. When you look at the top 5, and let's look at the new top 5. So here's last week. Here's what we had coming into the week: Ohio State, Texas, Oregon, Penn State, and Georgia. The new top 5. The Buckeyes bumped back 2 spots, and now you've got Penn State, who the Buckeyes get to play in 2 weeks, Oregon, and Texas. And I think it's clear now to me that Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas are the 3 best teams in the country. I'm not a believer in Penn State. Georgia, listen, that's a team we always see get the benefit of the doubt. The fact that Georgia didn't move up over us says a lot. The fact that Alabama didn't move up from 7 says a lot. Miami as well. These are Georgia and Alabama teams that always get the benefit of the doubt. If it's even close, there's clear doubt about those 2 teams. I know it, you know it, but I didn't think that we would see it from the pollsters. But I think that the Buckeye fans are viewing this game at Oregon in a lot different way than Ohio State fans are themselves, and where I think we are way more critical of that team because it feels like, oh, same old song and dance. And we're amplifying that onto what actually just happened on Saturday. We're tying it back into past losses with Ryan Day. We're tying in his end of game management failures from the past in with what we saw on Saturday. And that's all legit. But as far as this particular team and the goals that are still out in front of them, to me, I think it's still clearly a top 3 team in the country. Now, can it win going forward if it matches those guys again? You've got to change some things. You've got to get the pass rush going. I am just of the opinion that it doesn't matter how good your corners are. And we saw Denzel, for instance, get beat several times. I don't care how good you are. If you give a guy like Dylan Gabriel as much time as he needs, you cannot hold up the coverage against wide receivers like that. You just can't. So you have to get creative. You have to get a pass rush. And we sat here and we listened in the offseason. Jim Knowles get up there and people were asking him about the JUCK. And it was a very heavy topic of conversation because of the recruitment of Justin Hill. And Justin Hill, in my opinion, a pretty transcendent pass rusher. I think he's going to be unbelievable at the college level. So it was a heavy topic of conversation. And Jim Knowles said, we're not going to play the JUCK. If anything, we're going to go the other way, bring in a 5th defensive lineman. And the reason is the defensive line talent, much deeper than at the linebacker position. Well, while I believe that that's true, there is a lot of talent at the defensive line position. There are also a lot of very well-rounded players in that defensive line, the ends. They're very well-rounded, but none of them, not a one of them, not Kenyatta or Curry or Jack or JT, maybe Mitchell Melton, the best of all, is just a sick pass rusher. And it really, at this point, it's been a lot of years since we've had a sick pass rusher. We played Akron. We played Marshall, both of which had a sick pass rusher. Oregon has a really good pass rusher. Every other team we play has a really good pass rusher. You don't need a Boza or a Chase Young to have a really good pass rusher. So you have to start thinking at this point, what's going on in that room that you can't develop one guy that can go out there and be a menace on the edge? And maybe you lose something in the run game when you have him out there. You know what I mean? It's great to have well-rounded guys. I mean, the run game's half the battle, and they're all really well-rounded. But you need somebody who can specialize in getting after the quarterback. You need somebody you can call on to get it done. You need to call more stunts. You need to have more action up there. It all starts with the pass rush, like so often with football. It all starts up front, man. And when you're going against a quarterback like that, you have got to get him off his spot. And credit to him, even when they got him off his spot slightly, he was so calm, the way he stepped up, the way he moved. A lot of the compliments we gave to Will Howard all offseason. Like, man, I love the way this guy navigates in the pocket. Looks like he's never sweating, all his eyes always downfield. We saw a lot of that with Gabriel. But this is the main issue should we get the opportunity to play those guys again. You have got to find a way to get heat on him. However, I don't want to overlook the linebackers and the safeties tackling. It was atrocious. It's been overshadowed. Like, they're kind of getting left off the hook because of the lack of pass rush and because of the secondary play. But they missed 11 tackles. That's wow. I wasn't expecting that, man. 11 missed tackles. Now, you got to credit the opponent as well. Good players make you miss tackles, but that's insane. That's absolutely insane. So, a whole lot of problems to go over on that defense, a whole lot of theories on how to get it done. But I do think that maybe your biggest issue, and can you imagine if you are held back from winning a championship because the head coach let the defensive line coach dictate what his unit would not do to the defensive coordinator? Because that's been the case for a couple of years now. And Ryan Day, if he doesn't step up and make this change, like allow Jim Knowles to do what he wants to do to get the pass rush, I don't know, man. Like, I came in and I said, regardless of what happens this year, me as a fan, just me personally, I feel like I'm going to give Ryan Day 2 years of grace where, whatever happens, happens. But you went and you made all these difficult changes, I think, for the better of the program. Almost in a way, hit a semi-reset button for me as a fan. So I'm going to go ahead and give you that grace to say, like, I'll be a fan and I'll be rooting for you. And I'm not going to like cross over into screw this guy kind of mode. But I'll be honest, man, he's trying me. It's really trying. It's really trying with stuff like that, because I think that is poor leadership. Additionally, I also thought that part of the reason in giving up play calling was the benefit that you're going to get at the end of games and your end of game management. And I talked to a lot of people since I started this show about this in particular, because people were clowning Ryan Day can't get it done. He's going to screw up at the end of the game, blah. That's one of the things they always said to me. And I would sit here right behind this mic and say, that's what you thought. This is part of the reason he gave up play calling, because now he's not going to have his nose in his play sheet. He's going to be totally dialed in. All he's got to do at the end of the game is be the general. And not only is that all he has to do, he now has a direct audio line of communication to his quarterback. And what we saw at the end of that game was a flat out embarrassment for Ryan Day. It was an embarrassment for Will Howard, who I don't fault anywhere near as much as Ryan Day, but it was pretty clear that Will, in that moment, doesn't mean he's going to be that way moving forward. Maybe it was his first big moment like that. Certainly his first on that kind of stage, and we don't have the ratings for the game yet, but he definitely had a little bit of nerves that were visible, right? We could see that, and maybe it affected his play a little bit. But Ryan Day is experienced in these moments at this point. He's been in a lot of close games. He's screwed up several times in the past to have been able to learn from his screw-ups. He's screwed up big time, man. He's screwed up big time. When you get the ball with the minute 40 left, you have got to be fast. You've got one timeout. The first 3 plays, I think you had sack, completion, inbounds, and adding up the time that ticked off the clock in between those 45 seconds, 46 seconds. So sack, 15 or 16 seconds to snap the ball. Pass inbounds, 15 or 16 seconds. That's got to be faster, man. You've got to be in go mode, because you're going to have plays where things don't go right. Like, yeah, if it all goes perfect, if you're thinking in your head, if it all goes perfect and we pace it out like this, then a minute 40 is the perfect amount of time, so there's no time left, whatever. I don't know how you're going about scripting that up, but it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. He didn't call the timeout before the 2-minute warning, which, I don't know, that was kind of strange. Usually you see coaches do that. Everything, man. Everything about it was a disaster. I feel like my kids who sit next to me during the ends of these games and rattle off, here's what you got to do. Here, like this generation that has grown up playing games, and like a lot of them are just a little younger than me, playing Madden and stuff, like they are way better at this end of game management than some of these coaches. They need a tutorial. They need to learn what they're doing. the way he executed that was pathetic. It was pathetic and it was embarrassing. And if there's one or two things that I take out of this game that would make me change my mind on my stance to give this dude as a fan 2 years of grace for hitting the reset button, it is the fact that the defensive coordinator cannot do exactly what the hell he wants and what you paid him to do because of your defensive line coach. And you screwed up in your first audition without play calling at the end of the game. You screwed up. And because of that, now you're 2-7 in top 5 games. Now your team is not in the driver's seat, and you are just a couple more screw ups away from not only not realizing your goal of a national championship, but potentially missing the playoffs. Now, something catastrophic would have to happen for that to be the case, I think. Because even if you lose to Penn State and you are 10-2 at the end of the regular season, remember our stats here, guys. We've got the last 10 years, taking the current system and running it back on the last 10 years. This is the list of teams that I put together that would have missed the 12-team playoff. So here's the list of 2-loss teams that would have missed the 12-team playoff from 2014 to 2023. These are the only 2-loss teams up at the top, those 3 in the Big Ten and the SEC. Those are the only 2-loss teams that would have missed the format. 2015 Northwestern, then 2019, which was a really crazy year. You just had a lot more good teams than usual. You had Alabama, Minnesota, and even Notre Dame. So 2 brand name teams would have missed this format at 10-2. But other than that, we're looking at Oklahoma State, West Virginia in the Big 12, Washington State, BYU, Washington. Oklahoma is a bit of a surprise. But as far as brand name teams, you've got 1 Oklahoma team, 1 Notre Dame team, 1 Alabama team. And when I say brand name team, you know what I mean. Like Ohio States of the world, you get the benefit of the doubt when you're 10-2, depending on who you're going up against. But something catastrophic, I think, would have to happen for them to miss the playoffs. But it could be done. It could definitely happen at 10-2. The point is, you can't lose this game at Penn State, and you put yourself in this position. And boy, man, that's a pretty tough Penn State team. Another top 5 matchup. And just like that, you are right back at it again. And the pressure for this one is enormous. I mean, coming off a loss like that, you can't even really sit and wallow in your sorrows. You got to be right back on it because it's go time. It's go time again. As far as that Penn State game, did you guys watch it? I watched it for sure. And they have absolutely no offense to speak of outside of that tight end who is a stud. But I just don't see how they can beat Ohio State with an offense like that at all. And the defense, not that hot either. Penn State was calling trick plays, you know what I mean, against USC. By the way, James Franklin gets destroyed for his big game record as well. And there is a civil war kind of going on within the Penn State fan base of whether or not they are considering this win at USC as to credit James Franklin. Is that a big win or not? Now, USC wasn't ranked, but it is obviously a blue blood program. You go out there and you beat them. What do you think? Big game win for James Franklin or not? I don't know, but he won a fan in me. And let me show you what James Franklin did that I've never been a fan of his, but this I respect. So you've got the Penn State player coming and trying to plant the flag in the middle of the SC, and Franklin comes up and takes it away from him. And I like that. I like that about James Franklin. I'm very into that. This is funny. my girl D, experiencing her first loss as a Buckeye in Buckeye Nation. Welcome to the fam. We love you. Yeah, we are. We're a different breed, but that also has been one of the reasons, in my opinion, that Ohio State is the only blue blood who has never been bad, ever. Because when we look at some fan bases, when they lose, they are not, they're defended. Everything's defended by their fan base. And at Ohio State, you don't get it done, and you are held accountable. That's for sure. And that is, I mean, it's serious, it's unique, and it's a lot of fire and a lot of passion. But I think it's also important to have perspective here. Not only are all the goals right out in front of this team, but I do think it's fixable. You don't need, how many national championship teams have we seen with a great offense and a subpar defense? Quite a few. This team doesn't have a great offense. It's a very good offense. It doesn't have a subpar defense. It's a very good defense. When we look at these big time college football games anymore, and the reason I picked the score to be 35-24, you have got to understand, like, every big game we see now, for the most part, I'm trying to think back of when's the last time we saw one that was low scoring. Games between two big time teams, the offense is always beating the defense. It's like, it's just a matter of, can your offense beat their defense one more time than theirs can beat yours? So I absolutely think that you can still win the national championship. I don't feel as good about it as I did before. That's for sure. But I still feel you can. I still feel pretty decent odds about it. This team isn't the best. It's not the team I thought it was. We'll put it that way. I did think that the defense was crossing over towards maybe one of the best in Ohio State history. It's not that, but that's okay, because that's not necessary to reach the goals. All right. Our man has been successfully chauffeured to the studio. Let's bring him up. Good morning,
sir. My apologies.
How are you, brother?
I'm all right. I'm alive. I'm well.
Tell everybody what happened this morning, Chris.
I did not charge my car, so I had to stop halfway through on my drive to Columbus to make sure I made it.
Did not charge the car.
Did not, man. See, my family's home this weekend. My sister's home, and I've just been discombobulated, you know, especially after the loss too, dude.
Yeah.
Nothing's been right.
So to that loss, Chris, we sat on here post game.
Yeah.
Obviously, me, you, Ron, we were all a little tired, a little grumpy, and hadn't had time.
I was cranky.
You were a little bit cranky. We hadn't had time really to look back, process our thoughts. What did you get a chance to watch the All 22 yesterday, late last night? Probably not, huh?
I watched the defense.
Okay. I did too. So now, having some time processed it, how are you feeling at this point? I mean, there's so much to get into. How do you feel? Let's start here with this team's chances to win the national championship. How much less confident are you in that?
I think before the Oregon game, I thought that we were the team. After the Oregon game, I feel like we're a team, if that makes sense. Watching our defense kind of get treated the way they did kind of frightened me a little bit when you go up against some of those elite, you know, or elite college quarterbacks kind of late in the year. And honestly, I couldn't help but think about Ryan Williams versus our secondary. And that was kind of what I felt in the moment. But I still think we're a team. I don't know. Texas now frightens me a lot more than they did beforehand. I remember telling you last week that Texas didn't scare me at all. But now they do a little bit. But this might be the jolt this team needs. Like, it's hard to, you know, be a juggernaut wire to wire when you are kind of the hunted. But I feel like this team can still win a natty, but I feel like we're a team instead of the team.
To that point you just made, this might be the jolt they need. I've talked to a lot of Buckeye fans since that game ended, and heard that one a lot. And my feeling on that is, if you could not get it up
Right.
to play your A game for this game that we have circled and you have circled in the locker room, the one game this year you put up on the video board in the Woody at the practice facility, like if this game you couldn't get it up, like you needed to go out and lay an egg here, or, I'm talking not the team did not lay an egg, but one individual or your unit.
Yeah.
Like if motivation or anything like that was the issue, like if that wasn't going to do it, I'm out on you. Like, you know what I mean? Like if that wasn't going to do it, I've got no hope that it's coming. But to your point, I think it's a really good way to put it. I also thought that we were the team, and there was a lot of people that had Ohio State ranked number 1. I still feel that this team has all the pieces it needs to win a national championship. Can they make the necessary adjustments on defense? And Chris, before you got in here, I was talking about why I'm so bothered by the situation with the JUCK in particular, and not so much specifically that position, but the way that all went down, and the fact that the defensive coordinator cannot run the defense he wants or get the pressure. You need to get pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And he's over here trying to figure out ways to do it with his hand tied behind his back, because he's got to have 4 down defensive linemen, because that's been dictated by the defensive line coach, which is insane. Now, the fact Ryan Day's let this go on so long, I just don't understand. But at this point, you've got to think like everything's got to be on the table for them, right? I mean, I would certainly hope so.
I mean, if it's not, then there's a major issue. Like if everything's not on the table, then this is what much worse than we thought it was. Like if that is not on the table, then we have to really sit around and look at everybody. Like how committed are you to actually winning games, Larry Johnson? Like how committed are you to actually having the hard conversations, Ryan Day? How committed are you, and how much conviction do you have with your current defense, Jim Knowles? Like if everything is not on the table defensively right now, then there are much bigger issues. Like this is just way worse than I would have thought.
I'm absolutely with you, and I just feel like, I came into the season saying Ryan Day had bought 2 years of buy-in from me, just me, Juck the fan, before I'm gonna, it's gonna be straight up. I'm just gonna root for him, if this is the case, right? If you're not going to make sure that the defense coordinator now at this point, after you put this performance on with no pressure at all, if you can't step in and make sure that he can do everything he wants to do, then you're just not serious. It's just a total failure of leadership to me.
But also, I'll say it's on both sides too, because like I thought that going into this year, because of the secondary being BIA, shout out Garyon Conley, that you would also have some coverage sacks. Like we haven't seen that either.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not seeing the coverage sacks. And then we're also not seeing like the big plays and interceptions because guys are having to rush to get the ball out. We're seeing neither. And that's kind of one of the more bizarre things, because you thought with this secondary, okay, if our D-line stayed the way it was, we still should get coverage sacks because the secondary is supposed to be that good.
Yep.
And if you're the secondary, it's like, okay, like our defensive line should improve. So hopefully we'll get a chance to jump some routes because teams try to get the ball out quick. And that kind of hasn't happened either. Like Dylan Gabriel not going downfield all season and then choosing this game to be the game where they attack downfield means that there's something seriously wrong, and that should put everything on the table for Larry Johnson, Ryan Day, and Jim Knowles. They got to figure it out, or else this team is not going to accomplish things that they've set out to. And I hate to say it, but if you don't at least make it to the Natty with this team, with that kind of money that you spent, oh, goodness gracious.
I really think that seeing what we saw out of that Oregon offense after what we saw for their first 5 games was, I mean, obviously we talked a lot about it and a lot of people talked about it. Are we going to see, what wrinkles are we going to see out of Chip, out of the offense that they've been saving kind of for that game? And we saw Oregon come out and basically say, we've bamboozled you all. Look what we can do, and efficiently, excellently against BIA.
Yeah.
Props to him, man. It was a coaching masterclass, really, the whole game from Oregon. I thought that they outcoached Ohio State up and down the field. They went with a lot more tempo than obviously Ohio State was expecting. The guys weren't ready. 50% of those tempo snaps, they weren't getting set. It was just an unbelievable, at this point, we've talked a lot about coaches and our rankings and all that crap. For Ryan Day to be getting out coached and his staff to be getting out coached by Dan Lanning's staff, I think it just shows that you and I were right at the beginning of the season. This Oregon team really is who we thought they were.
Yeah.
Lanning and his staff really are who we thought they were. And I think it says more about them than it is a referendum on Ohio State.
I did see somebody I saw a tweet talking about Ryan Day. It's just a Michael Jordan of James Franklin's. And it's a crazy way to put it. But no, Ryan Day getting out coached has been really frustrating. And I thought that we wouldn't really see it because I thought it would be more into the CEO in terms of like on game day role to not have like the weird, like late clock blenders because he doesn't have to worry about calling the plays.
That was something. And I said it before you got in, like I argued with fans of opposing fan bases all off season who said that he's going to screw up at the end of the game like he always does. If he's not calling plays now, that's where you're wrong. All he's got to do is be the general. He failed at the general role, Chris. And this time he's even got a communication into the quarterback's ear.
Yeah, he stunk at the end of the game, dude. He was so bad.
He was bad. He was bad for sure. Additionally, Chris, the defensive ends, I think they're all very good, very well-rounded. But the fact that you have not had a guy who is a serious pass rush threat, who maybe lacks in the run game for this long now.
Mm-hmm.
We played Akron. They got one. Marshall, that kid Green, he's a stud. He's gonna get drafted for his pass rushing prowess.
Georgia Tech has one, going to be a second rounder.
We see schools like Purdue pop them up every now and again. You know what I mean? Like this is almost statistically impossible unless it is coaching. Like you don't need a Boza or a Chase Young to have a quality pass rusher. You just don't. And I feel like that's kind of set in that, well, people say they're not Boza or Young. You can't expect that. No, you can't. And Jack or JT don't even need to be that guy. But you got to have somebody.
Yeah, like give me those are 2 5-stars. Give me an Adisa Isaac, right? Like give me something. Like I want you to be Chase Young in that, but you don't have to be. Like I would gladly take a Tyquan Lewis. I would gladly take a Sam Hubbard. But it feels like because these guys are 5-stars and we criticize them, people are like, oh well, not everybody can be Chase Young. It's like cool. I don't want everybody to be Chase Young. I mean, I do, but also just give me 8 sacks a year. Give me 10 every 5 years. I mean, we haven't had a double-digit sack guy since 2019. That's disgusting. It's Ohio State.
I understand the stat itself is, it's a lot contingent on what the offense is going to let you do, but you're right, man. It's ridiculous. Not enough pressure, particularly in this game. And I think it's the single reason, if you can just say, all right, pick one why they lost. It's that, man. They could not disrupt him at all. They couldn't disrupt him at all. And it was sad. But moving forward, do you think there's another team? Obviously, you said Texas. Outside of those two, that has an offense that can do that to that defense? I don't.
You mean in the whole country or just like on our schedule?
In the country, in the playoff, a potential matchup that would make you think they can outscore us.
I mean, probably not. I mean, I think about like teams that have deep speed that could give us headaches. I still think Milrow could give us a headache.
Mm-hmm.
But that would have to be a pure shootout. I don't know if Georgia has the deep speed that Oregon does. I mean, Bama would worry me. Texas, like I said, would worry me. I think who has a really good. I mean, with the way I would have said Ole Miss, but with the way they looked against LSU, I don't think it's very good. I don't think they're very good defensively. They no longer worry me that much. And now it's kind of a trend with Ole Miss. No, those are the only two. Those are the only two I would say.
I mean, when we look at the flip side, like those defenses, all those teams you named, like I just don't think that. I think Ohio State would be favored number one against all those teams. I still
Even
think
Texas or no?
no, not Texas. The
Okay.
ones you just named,
Just
outside.
Alabama and
Yeah. So as we look at the top 4, right? Ohio State now number 4, and we look at the credit that they're being given. I think number 1, that's kind of shocking. That's something we're not used to. That the Ohio State fan base maybe being harder on Ohio State after this 1-point loss than the national pundits, and I think we'll see from Vegas as well when we see the line for Penn State come out, which I expect the Buckeyes will be a favorite in that game. By the way, that Penn State, did you watch that game?
I did. It was looking like it was going to be a classic James Franklin special.
Where do you weigh in on the Penn State fan argument? They're having an argument on whether or not they can credit James Franklin with a big win for this, as USC was unranked.
I mean, you should. I mean, you went all the way out west. Out west teams have done better out there when we've had to travel. And you should credit him because he got rid of one of the James Franklin bugs, right? Because that's a game that every other version of James Franklin loses. Every other version. Yeah, did he dig the hole? Yeah, but he's going to do that once or twice a year. But the fact that they won a game late is James Franklin well done, to me at least. And also, like, USC, I know that they stink, but they're always kind of scary. I mean, because Lincoln Riley is, when he gets going play sequencing-wise, he's hard to stop. And this felt like he was just going to get his James Franklin on James Franklin. So, no, I give USC credit. Penn State fans should give James Franklin credit though too.
That game for their program, I mean, it just feels massive. The Penn State Ohio State game. They've obviously not performed well enough against Ohio State. They've killed him for it, and he's now got an opportunity for a top 5 matchup against Ohio State in his building. I can't wait for game week to be done with this Oregon crap. But
do tight ends? Does Penn State's tight end scare you?
No, no.
He's like, he doesn't wow me athletically, but he's just so productive.
He is, dude. 17 catches, like 224 yards. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, man.
Are you kidding me? But that said, like, if you can cut that in half, like, they're cooked. They're just cooked.
I feel like tight ends always kill us, though, dude.
They do. They do.
Like, I think about the Iowa team that had, like, the 2 crazy tight ends. I think about, like, last year's Michigan game. I mean, J.J. McCarthy had, like, 150 yards passing. 110 of them were to tight ends. And it just always feels like a big third down the stretch, a tight end was open. And it feels like our position that always gets so much, blame is the linebacker room. So not so much this game because of how bad the DBs were, but and honestly the D line as well. But I don't know. He worries me because he's just so unathletic that I feel like he's just going to wreak havoc.
I mentioned that point before you got on that despite not having a very good game, the linebackers looked better than the defensive line and the secondary, so they've been let off the hook. But we had 11 missed tackles, which is just a crazy number of missed tackles.
Yeah.
And they were out of position quite a bit. We talked on the post-game show. Have you thought any more about the very end of the game, electing when you're in position for a 47-yard field goal? Ryan Day clearly was not satisfied with kicking anywhere comfortable. He got, some could say greedy. I would say he did the right thing. I still stand by that, by trying to pass the ball and get out of any kind of range that was going to be sketchy. And I feel like college kickers, man, there's a reason it's a meme. It's true.
Yeah.
In a moment like that, literally the entire Ohio State fan base of 13 million or whatever it is, the other 14 million watching on TV, all the Oregon, like the whole country is watching that kid in the entire 3-hour game hanging in the balance. They suck at it. They just do. I want more yards, and I ripped him after the Georgia game for not being more aggressive in that instance. So to change my mind at this point and say you screwed up this time when he did what I thought he should, which is quick out to JJ. What can go wrong? Well, we saw what went wrong. What are the odds of that going wrong?
Yeah, and also I'm with you. I mean, it's like if you run the ball and get a holding call, it's like the same thing, you know? So, like, I think going for more yards is the right play. I've heard a lot of guys, a lot of coaches, NFL coaches primarily talk about kind of late in games, even if they're only down a field goal, they'll call it like they're down by 4 to be more aggressive, to try to put more stress on the defense. Because last thing you want to do is bail out the defense. And again, like, I still criticize Ryan Day for how he handled the end of that Georgia game about tightening up. Because he was okay with the 50-yarder because Noah Ruggles' career high was 49 yards and cleared it by a good amount. But no, I have no problem with the aggression at the end of the game. And if you have you have a fifth-year senior starting quarterback, like, there's not supposed to be that weird lapse in judgment at the end there. So I do not blame. I don't blame Ryan Day for being aggressive. Do I blame him for a lot of the other stuff that happened in that game? Absolutely, but not for being aggressive late in the game.
Thank you, Coach Zach, USMC vet, $4.99. Appreciate you, buddy. Coach Zach says, can't wait for Zach's breakdown, but after sitting on it, the impression over here is Knowles is washed as a DC because we don't let him play his system. A little to the point we were talking about. If you're, why even bring somebody in if you're not going to let them do what they do best? I can't help but agree with you there. And busting nuts, go Bucks. Thanks for the $1.99, buddy. Appreciate you. Let's move on to the national, Chris. So, Bama, South Carolina,
Right.
Not starting good for DeBoer. We thought that everything was going great. I was surprised by the recruiting surge. I was surprised by how everything was going. The attitude and the mood was different down there. Everybody was clapping and happy about it. They have music blasting. They got Willie the Redneck coming in, and Willie the Redneck is at practice. They're having a good time. It's a totally different Alabama. They look like a team that had a lot of fun in the offseason, the last couple of games. And Kalen DeBoer all of a sudden is, wow. Thinking it's bad up here, buddy. After the loss and then this performance, I checked their boards, which, by the way, hilarious.
They're on fire. They're on fire.
So here's the funniest thing about checking an Alabama message board, right? You see the crazy titles for how mad they are, and mixed in every other one is Trump.
Yeah.
Curious about Bama. Here's what Trump did today on the Alabama football board.
That's facts, dude. You got to put a hazmat suit before you go in there.
So obviously South Carolina probably should have beat them. Bama gets lucky, but they're in shambles. I think they got
Nicholas Harbor. Nicholas Harbor finally.
How about it?
How about it?
Your dude. You've been waiting on him. You've been waiting on that
dude.
one.
He's the biggest freak in college athletics, and he just wasn't playing. They put him in. They ran a fade ball. He caught the touchdown.
Total stud.
Dude. Dude's a freak show, man.
Georgia stayed at number 5 despite their win. They only beat Mississippi State by 10. It was 41-31. I've been very critical of Kirby, and it's come off like just a Buckeye fan who is trolling Georgia, I'm sure, because I'm a little bit hyperbolic about it. But I am serious. I do think that he has lost part of the team, a certain faction of the team, and I think he's reeling over it. He can't snap his finger and get them back in line. And I think it's apparent, and it's coming out. Last week, we played the clip of him whining about the fans. And then coming out of this Mississippi State game, for everybody who hasn't seen, this is Kirby on the sideline at the Mississippi State game.
No, he didn't.
So if you missed it there, that's Mississippi State's quarterback. Like, dude, that's honestly, I feel like if that was somebody else, that would be on the front page of every website. It's barely getting any run. You can't put your hands on a player, man.
No,
like,
you can't touch him.
That's insane. That's the opposing team's player, and he straight up pushed him. I don't care how aggressive it was. You can't do that, dude. Like, this doesn't seem like something he would have done in the past. I don't know, man. I think that the problems are pretty deep at Georgia.
I think so too. And not just that, but like that piling on everything else. I think Urban Meyer said it best. It's hard to stay at the top of the mountain because when you get on the way up, and Kirby's thing has always been about being the underdog. Well, what are you now doing when you're not the underdog? When these kids go there and expect to win, when kids go there with a little bit of an entitlement about winning instead of having to earn it. And what does that do for you as a coach? I mean, he's complained now about the fans not being loud enough. He's got all the off the field issues with going all throughout that team. And they just don't have that same nastiness or edge they used to. And I think in large part that comes with part of recruiting is that when you go on these runs, you can tend to get kids that are front-running kids. And that, I think, is wearing thin on Kirby Smart. And that's why I think we're getting the result from Georgia that really, to me, I don't know how you feel. When you watch them, do they strike you as a hungry team?
No, not at all.
What's always been Kirby's thing?
That's
every year when we watched them against Oregon 2 years ago, hungry team. Now it's not.
Do you remember, Chris? He tried to and successfully.
Yeah, they said we would go 5-7.
Team
Yeah,
into thinking that everybody was picking them to be a garbage team in the year that they repeated, and we all knew the whole year they were going to win the championship. Everybody knew.
Dude, we knew, bro. They had a guy get on camera. What up, Pat? Get on camera and say they thought we would go 5-7 when their Vegas over-under total was 10 wins.
He successfully brainwashed them into that. Like, I don't know how you do that this day and age, but he did it. And you're right. He's the hunter. Now as the hunted, things are not going so well. I think I think that this is going to get worse before it gets better.
And that's what separates like your Nick Sabans from your Kirby Smarts. And you know, Kirby's got time to turn around. They could end up winning it. Just doesn't feel as hungry this year. I mean, shoot, we saw with Clemson. Clemson was the darling. They were the hungry underdog. They got to the top of the mountain. Now, Dabo had a litany of other mistakes, but when you're the hunted, it's a little bit trickier.
I do want to run through while we're on the national stage. Clemson, by the way, quietly they've crept back up into the top 10 now. I'll pull those rankings up for everybody to see. Crept back into the top 10. Klubnik's looking good. When I look at these teams outside the top 5, when I look at Miami, Alabama, LSU, Iowa State, Clemson, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Chris, I think Clemson might be the best of that entire bunch.
They're the most dangerous of that group for sure. Cade Klubnik's up to 15 touchdowns, I think. He's got like 1,500 yards, only 2 picks. He's playing really well. They're a team with a lot of confidence. They got the kind of the weak ACC dog there. I mean, I would pick them to beat Iowa State. I'd pick them to beat LSU. And today, death being pointed at me, I'm picking them to beat Miami for sure.
I would too today. And you know, I've been Mr. Miami's going to win the ACC since June, but I think I'm with you. And Tennessee dropping out of the top 10. What a disappointment the way they
dude, I thought Florida was going to get them, dude.
It really looked like they were. And you know, shout out to JUCK for picking that game properly.
Shout out JUCK.
Hey, the JUCK on Bucks picks are absolutely on fire. We just killed it this week. We totally killed it.
JUCK and killing it, man.
All right, my man. Any parting words for our very upset chat about the game before we wrap her up?
You know, keep melting down online. Put some pressure on someone, Jim Knowles or Larry Johnson, to make a change, man. They need to know that this is not okay. Because I hate feeling like this, man. I hate feeling like this.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, brother. I appreciate you. Have a good show today. And there is our man, Chris Drew from Menace to Sports. So, nationally, guys, to sum it up, Bucks are still in really good position. Many of us thought that they might lose that game and we would still be right there in the mix, and they are. It's just a matter of how much do you trust. You feel like you've lost maybe a little trust if you're someone like me who expected Ryan Day to dial in that into the game play calling. I feel like I've lost a little trust, and he's got every opportunity to get it back. Willie, I don't know. My man Dago, what's up, buddy? Usually not in the Juck on Bucks live because he's a Californian and it's still pretty early for him. Good to see you this morning, my man. And he's talking about his Padres. The Padres. I like their uniforms, but yeah, I wouldn't know anything about that, buddy. Day 1K thinks that Oregon loses to Texas and Ohio State in a neutral location by 2 scores. I don't know about that. Iowa should have beat Iowa State. What's up, Fisherman? Good morning, buddy. What's up, Spivey? Mika, season definitely not over. Hey, Sue. They don't quite have the wide receiver talent. How would we match up with Miami's offense as Oregon? But you're also going to have to account for Cam running it more than Dylan Gabriel did. It's not a great matchup, to be honest. They're going to score some points. Miami would score a good amount of points on Ohio State's defense, I think. But on the other side of the ball, I think that, Will's good against their strength is up front. And I think that Will is pretty savvy at dealing with those rushers. But now we've got to factor in the Josh Simmons injury, right? And what are you going to do with the Josh Simmons injury? You know, you sat there in the offseason and when Tegra was kind of gaining steam to win the right guard job, and they had an option at that point to go all in on his training as a guard or to cross train him as a guard and tackle. And they chose to go all in on his training as a guard because they thought better to try to get him good at this than okay at both of them. And at the time, sounded like a good philosophy, but you didn't have any depth at tackle. So now looking back, maybe you can second guess that because now Tegra isn't as far along at tackle as you would like him to be if you're planning on using him. I'll tell you what you can't do, I don't think, is continue to roll Zen Mikulski out there because upon first watch, it looked like he had a pretty good game. When digging in a little further on the second watch and keying in, I don't think so. I don't think he's capable of being the left tackle on a team that's going to make a deep playoff run. So your best bet is probably to move Tegra. My Lord, somebody's blowing me up. Apologize, guys. Your best move to get your best 5 out there. So you got to bring Austin out there, who also didn't play good against Oregon. Austin Searveld at right guard and probably move Tegra to tackle. Whether you move Fryer over to the left, Tegra to the right, I don't know. But I think we'll probably not see this just we're plugging Zen Mikulski in. I just don't think that's the way it's going to go. But it certainly changes things. Ben Hartman with a really positive attitude. The loss only affected him for like an hour. He's moved on. Marathon, not a sprint. GOJ says, stop forecasting ahead. Who cares about Miami right now? It's called sports talk, bud. I mean, if you don't like it, if it's not your thing, I wouldn't watch it. That's what we talk about sports, hypothetical situations, things that are happening now. Just sports talk in general. If you're new to the format, it's kind of what we do. My man Brandingo was very confident heading into the game. Obviously down bad. Sorry, brother. I am too. I've got to, I'll be honest. I did not want to come on and do the show on Sunday. And I also found that there are a whole lot of people who've been waiting all this time I've been doing this show to introduce themselves to me. This was my first Ohio State loss since I started the show. And a bunch of people were just waiting to say hello, introduce themselves for that first Buckeyes loss. And they weren't so friendly. So that was interesting, and man, it felt like a funeral on Sunday for me. You never like a loss. You hate it when you lose and you feel somewhat embarrassed, right? And I just felt somewhat embarrassed. But I just got to keep saying, like, that team was really flipping good, man. Way better than I thought. Morning, Dave. Thoughts on moving Donovan Jackson to tackle? Honestly, I hadn't really thought about it. I don't know. Let's get back to that and we'll talk about all the possible scenarios tomorrow. Let me dig in on that a little bit. Absolutely feel horrible for Josh Simmons, the guy totally turning himself into potentially a first-round left tackle, and then for that to happen is just absolutely heartbreaking. Much more so for him than the team. I mean, it's just terrible. So this is the part of the show where I interact with the chat and I talk about what they would like to talk about. If you don't like it, you can kick rocks. How about that? Or I'll kick them for you. Yeah, Johnny, that was insane. So Trayshawn Holden spitting on IGB, and this is what we know about IGB, right? Like, he can get under people's skin so good, and it's great about him, right? The handsy, how annoying he is with the hands. He talks nonstop crap. We've seen clips coming out of practice where he's gotten under Jeremiah's skin, and Jeremiah is just so laid back, so chill. But he absolutely got under Holden's skin. Holden puts out his apology, and it's a letter. And I saw somebody on Twitter took it and plugged it into Chat GPT, which is how the professors and the students, or the professors catch the students who are cheating using Chat GPT. And the whole thing match, right? So the whole thing was written by Chat GPT, which is pretty funny. Steely, what's up, buddy? Hey, Doreen. Brandingo, thanks, buddy. Yes, she is fantastic. Neil says Ohio State will need another, or doesn't have another left tackle. Someone's going to have to step up big. And, you know, this is the point where you look at all the failures to add depth at the tackle position. And this is the one spot that you didn't have any depth, that you couldn't afford to lose anybody from the season. And go figure. This is what happens. And if this season ultimately you don't end up reaching your goals, you know, this might be a moment we look back at and say, we knew it. We knew we had no depth there. We knew it ahead of time. The good news is, I guess, we're heading into Penn State, so we can see right away how this is going to look against a team that can rush the passer, because Penn State is going to absolutely come after whatever the Buckeyes end up doing out there. JJ thinks Josh Fry should be fired after this season. Okay. So often confusing. You got Justin Fry, the offensive line coach, Josh Fryer, the right tackle. I'm assuming you're talking about Justin Fry. And you are not the only one. That is a pretty common statement for sure. Our man Dot, sad. I am too, man. I'm having a hard time keeping a smile. My man, I totally get this. My man Prent, this is Air Nolan's pops. My man Prentice Nolan the third. Here's the thing. I totally understand why anybody would feel that way, that Coach Day and the staff will figure it out, right? I just have a problem having blind faith in a staff that put together that defensive game plan for that game. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I just can't go into that with blind faith thinking you're going to do everything right and you're going to make all the right decisions, because that was a terrible defensive game plan. They didn't even have their guys ready to get set when Oregon ran tempo. Like, you know, zero press rush and zero attempt even to adjust that. At halftime, I think we maybe saw 2 or 3 blitzes. Like, where's the Caleb Downs blitzes? Where's the creativity? Where's the ways to get pressure? I'm not seeing any of it. When they show me that, when they show me this is what we're trying to do, here's some packages, like, we saw nothing. And until I see that, like, I'm not going to feel great about it. I'm not going to feel great about what they're doing until they start to show us a little something. I can say this for anybody thinking Nebraska is going to be a game. It's not. That team absolutely does not have the talent. When you play a team like Nebraska, that's when this talent gap really shows up. That is when it's just an absolute whooping. And those are the ones really that give you confidence when you head into a game like a talent equated game. Because you look back and you say, dude, that Nebraska team's got some NFL dudes here, here, and here. They've got good coaching. They've got a quality upcoming young quarterback, and we beat them by 25. Obviously, we're going to do great against the talent equated matchup. And the talent equated matchup is when the coaching staff almost feels like we've got the squad that can do this, and then that's it. They just roll into the game like that. Their game plans are vanilla. They're boring, and they're not getting the job done. They're just not. So they got outcoached by Oregon, and that's embarrassing. That's a new staff. You should not be outcoached by them, and there is absolutely nobody that could possibly say otherwise. They got outcoached. Now, I'm not saying they're trash. I support them, but they absolutely need to do better. Dave, thoughts on McDonald and Curry on the D line? Curry, I think. So here's a stat that I thought was odd. They were ranking what percentage of snaps these defensive ends are winning in a pass rush situation. Jack was number 1, JT was number 2, Kenyatta was number 3, Curry was number 4. But watching Curry out on the field certainly feels to me like he is one of the top 2 at getting that pass rush. He certainly brings the juice, as does Caden McDonald. Not to say that the starters don't. But I absolutely feel like there's very limited drop-off going to Caden Curry. And maybe he adds a little extra bump. Like, I still feel like he does. Obviously, those are PFF stats, right? Which I always take with a grain of salt. But he adds some juice. And I like that. I think that's contagious. Not to say the other guys don't have juice, but yes, I think he should be playing more. And Caden McDonald is, I think he's the future, and absolutely, I'm down to see that more. Brandingo thinks that Oregon didn't have their best defensive end, and he still feels like their defensive line looked better than ours. How is that possible? Well, that's the big question, right? When's the last time that this defensive line, which is full of excellent players, has looked like an excellent unit in a big game? It's been a long time, man. Been a long time. Yeah, Curry absolutely has a motor. Razor Sharp Forever is done with Verk. John B. Arvell played 4 snaps, man. 4 snaps. Terrible. I was waiting for this to start popping up. Buckeye Bubba, why is Laurinaitis getting a pass for bad linebacker play? I think the reason he's getting a pass is because of Sonny's transition being so new, Arvell being very young, and not having his recruits in yet, which, by the way, he went out and landed him some doozies. I think that's why, on top of, obviously, he's James Laurinaitis. But you're right, man. Not good enough. And I think some people are maybe Just hesitant to call him out because maybe that's not the popular thing to do. Everybody loves James Laurinaitis, people behind a microphone. But no, it's not been good enough at all. And it's a failure on James Laurinaitis' part, for sure. For sure. All right, my friends. That's what we've got today. I appreciate you all so much for joining me. Like I said, it's a bye week. There will be plenty of things to discuss as we move on throughout the week. What I'm very bothered by, and I just want to say this one more time in hopes that maybe there is enough push on this end of things to get these words to the people who can get these words to where they need to go to. Sitting back and letting your team and your players take all this crap like they have. They're taking a ton of crap. And not having your normal Tuesday press conference to get up and face the music by the coaching staff is cowardice. It's unacceptable. You got, after the game, 7 minutes Ryan Day talk for, 3 minutes Jim Knowles, 3 minutes Chip Kelly. Get up behind the podium and answer some questions and deflect some of this negativity from your players on Tuesday, which they are not doing, and they absolutely should be. So anyway, that's what we got. Appreciate you guys all so much. I will see you tomorrow at 9:30. JUCK on Bucks out.